This podcast is brought to you by North Carolina's electric cooperatives.
This is NC Spin, an unrehearsed discussion on issues of interest to North Carolinians. Now, here is your moderator, Tom Campbell.
It's been a hot week. We've got some hot topics to discuss this week. Thank you for watching this week's NC Spin. We begin with the state budget dance staged in our capital, then consider the Supreme Court's decision on partisan gerrymandering in our state. Next, we talk, if we get time, about data showing our state's getting older. And of course, we're going to ask the panel to tell us something we don't know. Let's introduce this week's panel to you. They include Chris Fitzsimon, the director of the Newsroom; Howard Lee, former legislator and former chair of the State Board of Education, former cabinet officer; Patrick Sebastian, a political and communications consultant; and Becki Gray, the senior vice president of the John Locke Foundation. We'll begin our uninterrupted debate after these brief messages from our underwriters.
From treating the newest member of your family to helping a loved one make end-of-life decisions, your family physician is with you every step, for every stage of life, for every member of your family. Despite a healthcare landscape fraught with potential landmines, family physicians across North Carolina are providing you a lifetime of committed, dependable medical care. Family Physicians, your trusted healthcare advisor for life.
Life's busy, but you're in control. As an electric cooperative member, you have access to lots of tools to help manage your home energy use and budget, so you can focus on what's most important.
Partners for Innovation in Healthcare. We're supporting common sense solutions for North Carolina's healthcare delivery system, promoting access, affordability, quality care, and innovation. Visit us on the web at pihc.info.
NC Spin is brought to you in part by the North Carolina Farm Bureau. The Farm Bureau and Agriculture. We keep North Carolina growing.
Let's get started. Both houses of our legislature passed budget proposals, but before legislation could be passed, there were big differences that needed to be ironing out. Lawmakers announced the resolution of their conference committee and voted on the budget this week. Howard Lee, on Monday morning, the legislative leaders announced they had reached agreement on the differences between the House and Senate version of the budget, but they said they weren't going to tell us what they were until Governor Cooper presented his counteroffer. Have you ever heard of anything like that before?
Not in all my legislative life, but I do understand that the legislature was looking for, the leadership was looking for a way to kind of slow things down. I think the governor has been very clear from the beginning as to what his priorities were and what he wanted to see in the budget, especially including Medicare expansion as well as issuing bonds to underwrite school construction. So I don't know why they felt the need to use that as a ploy to not move forward.
Well, I mean, it was very interesting because we got into this he said, she said kind of match, Patrick, from the standpoint of the governor, the legislator said, well, he won't play. He won't come sit down and negotiate with us. And the governor is saying, what's to negotiate? They didn't want to consider any of my budget priorities to start off with.
Yeah, well, the first 2 years of Governor Cooper's administration, he didn't really have any relevance in governing because they had a supermajority, and now he does. And now they're telling him the legislature is not going to let him get away with these broad strokes of saying, well, I want Medicaid expansion, I want more money for teachers. He actually has to provide numbers and data to back up what he wants.
Well, he did introduce a budget.
He introduced a budget, but that's always the very, very beginning.
He had budget numbers from that standpoint.
Right.
Chris, I've always said that this budget process is like a dance. We go through this dance process. Now, in previous years, back when some of us first started following the legislature, it was kind of like a minuet. It was a carefully orchestrated kind of procedure. What's going on here? I can't figure out whether it's a boogaloo or a do-si-do or a chicken dance.
Well, maybe we could all demonstrate.
You're our former disc jockey here.
I'll do the boogaloo in a minute. No, I think that what's happening here, and I don't begrudge them because this is the way the politics and media work these days, the Republicans obviously are working together. They had sort of a media stunt where they had a chart up and they had no numbers from Governor Cooper. They had their numbers, their proposed numbers, their final numbers, and Governor Cooper's numbers. And one reporter pointed out, I'm pretty sure the governor did have numbers. He proposed a budget. He sent it over there. You're released it. They could have put that up, but this is just playing the media game and trying to get good publicity. The problem is the voters of North Carolina don't really care who's mad on Monday and who didn't show up on Tuesday and what Bojangles biscuit Phil Berger had on Thursday. What they want is they want a responsible spending plan that invests in North Carolina. They do overwhelmingly favor Medicaid expansion. The governor has a popular view there, and we're going to see how that all plays out.
Becki, I wrote a column this week, and I said this really has gotten to the point where it's not about the budget at all anymore. They're just posturing for 2020 and the elections. Is that not correct?
Well, I think there's a lot of that. I think there's a lot of politics that are going on there. Tom, I happen to believe very strongly that good policy is good politics. And so, to Chris's point of, looking for ways of not just agreement. I mean, I'm not that interested in keeping score and who gets what. What I'm interested in is what's better for North Carolina. How do we continue to move our economy forward? How do we make sure people who need our help are getting it? How do we provide good schools? I believe that this budget that was proposed this week, and as a matter of fact, the governor vetoed it this morning, I believe this budget does that, and it moves those priorities forward. All this other stuff, it's like the food fight in the cafeteria, where most of us just care about getting on the bus, going home, enjoying our family, and having a nice weekend, and, those kind of things.
Howard, one of the things I found interesting about this was that in both houses, the Senate and the House, there were several Democrats that voted for this budget. Now, I know that legislatively that you can't ask for a budget to be reconsidered if you didn't vote for it to start off with. Is that what was going on here, or were they really voting conviction?
I think in part that's what was going on, and I think it was good politics to be able to position in that fashion. In the Senate, I'm not sure Democrats make a hill of bean of difference anyway because of the difference in the numbers. But in the House, I think it's very crucial that Democrats hold together, because in spite of all of the things that have gone on, this budget has some holes in it that really do need to be dealt with. I'm not sure how quickly they can do it, but I hope
Patrick,
Democrats
that is really
together.
The question, is can the veto stick? Now, he had a test earlier in this session with the Born Alive abortion bill, and the Senate overrode the veto, but the House didn't. Can this veto stick? Can they get the votes together to override this veto?
I think they can if the governor does not present an actual alternative to what the Republicans have already passed, and he's not really done that. The governor cannot govern by press release, and that's what he's been trying to do. He's been in New York City raising money, at the same time sending out press releases about the Republicans won't meet with me. Well, he needs to step up to the plate and offer some actual alternatives besides his very initial
I just got to take issue with you on that. He has offered actual alternatives to the budget.
But he needs to offer
I'm not trying to defend him, but I think that is
to
the
offer
case.
an alternative to what the Republicans have proposed. He keeps swatting that down. Okay, well, tell us where you can actually find the money to do your thing.
Valid. Okay, Chris, to the point, though, on this veto override, in order to do that, they're going to have some Democrats, both in the Senate and the House, to change votes. And the message is going to be, hey, this is good for North Carolina. Why are you standing in the way of teacher pay raises and state employee pay raises? Come on and join the crowd and vote. Now, the other side of it is the Democrats are going to be saying, hey, stick with our tribe and we'll beat it.
Well, a couple things. First of all, I think the Senate, I don't know whether they could override it or not. The override this time starts in the House. It's also worth noting a couple of the senators who voted for the budget were standing behind Governor Cooper at his press conference where he announced his veto of the budget. So I think you'll see several Democrats in the Senate and some in the House who voted for the budget will vote to sustain their governor.
That's what I said. It was a parliamentary
and I think the Republicans are telling people inside the legislative halls that they have the votes, even in the House. But people I was talking to before we started this program today said it's very unlikely at this point. Things could change. But the Democrats feel fairly confident in the House that they will have enough folks who will stay that this veto will be sustained and the negotiations will restart.
And by the way, I need to tell our viewers, because you may not know, this program is about as fresh as you can get so far as television is concerned. We're taping it Friday at noon to air this weekend, and so it's pretty fresh. Becki, let's get into some of the issues. The big issue, of course, was the fact that the governor's biggest priority, Medicaid expansion, was not even being discussed. Is it dead?
Well, I mean, the House has said they'll consider it. One of the things that they inserted in the budget, as I think a concession to the governor, was we'll call a special session, or you can call a special session. We'll come back and we'll talk about health care issues, Medicaid expansion. Well, Rules
promises made?
Rules Chairman David Lewis and Speaker Moore have said in light of this part of the conversation that they are in favor of the Carolina Cares, which is sort of Medicaid expansion light. Senator Berger has said the votes are not there in the Senate. The Senate is not interested in this.
Well, he said, no way, Jose. If he said, I want this, it would get done, wouldn't it?
No, not necessarily.
think?
No, I mean, I think he is speaking for his caucus, but I don't think there's that kind of control. I mean, that's one thing, too, that I think needs to be part of this discussion is, we're talking as if there are mindless legislators who are not able to vote their convictions, make up their own mind, have a position that they're just waiting for the governor or the Speaker of the House or the President of the Senate to tell them what to do. I'm down there every day. That is not the case with these people.
But it's caucus politics in the legislature.
In some ways, but most of those caucus decisions are made with a consensus and a lot of discussion within the caucus.
Howard, let's move over to a topic that I know is dear to your heart, and that is teacher pay raises and education issues. The teachers going to get an average of 3.9% over the next 2 years, but it's heavily skewed toward teachers that have more than 15 years in the classroom, especially those with more than 21 years. What's the purpose of that?
Well, it's just an attitude of not being fair and equitable and progressive in supporting teachers. I looked at the teacher increase. It's almost an insult with what we're doing for teachers.
I mean, NCAA said.
I frankly don't understand how we can have a budget that is so overloaded with pork, and I'm not going to condemn any pork activity, but to have that much pork in a budget and not recognize the need to increase our teacher salaries, I think is inexcusable.
One thing that did happen, Patrick, is state employees got 2.5% a year, which is novel. It's new. It's the biggest pay raise they've had in some time. And state retirees got a 0.5% COLA. What's your reaction to that?
I'm the son of a teacher. I'm a big believer in teachers, public schools. But, teachers are not the only state employees in North Carolina, and the Republicans want to take care of other state employees as well because they usually, frankly, get the shaft. And it seems like in the teacher pay raise, the Republicans just cannot win. When they passed the historic teacher pay raises a few years ago, and for several years in a row, they geared it towards the younger teachers to increase the amount of people coming into the profession.
Yeah.
They got yelled at because they didn't take care of people that had 15 years or more of experience. Well, now they do that, and now that's not enough. We only have so much money that we can spend on this.
Well, interesting. Yes. We have more money than we're spending on this. We just cut taxes another $400 to $500 million in corporations. We've cut it $4 billion. Why doesn't every teacher get a significant raise? Why do we have to say, do you get a raise as a teacher? You don't get much of a raise as a teacher. By the way, the state of South Carolina gave all its teachers more money than North Carolina is giving its teachers.
But with the
we
teacher
still have
pay
higher
increase,
teacher pay in North Carolina
And
and South Carolina.
But we're lower than the Southeast average.
I think it's important to remember, too, that in this budget, this will be the 6th and 7th consecutive year that teachers have gotten a pay increase. And one of the things, when you're doing this responsible budgeting, you don't want to get out in front of your headlights. You want to make sure that whatever pay increases you give that are going to continue from now on, that the economy is able to keep up with that. Let me switch
over. We could stay on this subject for a long time, but I want to try to cover as much as we can of the budget. Howard, I know you're interested in what happened at the Department of Health and Human Services since you have formerly been involved over there. They got some really big cuts over there. They underfunded Medicaid, according to the department, by $63 million. When you put the Fed match on top of that, it's about $125 million. But they cut the budget by $42 million. DHHS says, man, this size could eliminate the staff collectively for the Division of Aging and Adult Services, the Division of Child Development and Early Education, the Division of Social Services, the Division of Services to the Blind and Deaf, and Division of Public Health combined. And what's up with DHHS?
I don't understand it. I've been watching, of course, the plan to possibly relocate the whole DHHS operation. And the way they are treating it right now sort of falls into the same vein as resistance to go forward with expanding Medicaid. It's almost as if there's an attack on these social services that are so much needed and are growing based on the population aging as well as the young needs.
Well, let's talk about this move to Granville County, because when the Senate originally passed it, we thought it was sort of a fluky thing and that it was never going to happen. Well, it came out in the budget. They're moving DHHS. Now, DHHS did a survey, and they said as it stands right now, 11% of their current employees have daily commutes of 90 minutes or more. If they move to Granville County, 85% of their current employees will Doesn't that say to you that these guys ain't going to be moving?
Well, it says it's going to be very difficult, and I think the big fear is we're going to lose a lot of expertise of people who live in the Triangle area, Raleigh, Durham, and Chapel Hill, who work there, who they don't make as much as they would make in the private sector, but at least they can live where they want. I think there's going to be a big brain drain at HHS, and why in the world would we do that? What's the justification?
Well, and they hire so many, advanced degree kind of professionals,
right,
PhDs and stuff like that.
But they're going to have to move to HHS, right?
No
Because
question about it.
the buildings but the buildings that they're in are dilapidated, they're outdated, they're going to have to move.
And
the
original
question
plan
is
was to
not
put them
whether
on the
they're
Dix
going to
campus.
move, but where.
The good news is that teachers didn't get that big of a raise. HHS is worried, but Justin Burr, a former state legislator, got a 52% raise. Nobody ever knew it was happening and never came up.
Why in the
world would we give a former legislator a bigger raise than any person in North Carolina?
One final
that
issue
is a
on
good
that.
question.
Patrick, you were going to say something.
Well, I don't understand same with DOT moving to Rocky Mount. I just don't get it. Raleigh's the capital city.
Right.
This is where state employees, this is where the governor is. This is where the cabinet secretaries report to the governor who lives in Raleigh. They need to be in Raleigh. I don't understand this moving.
Join the crowd. There's a lot in that parade. The one thing I wanted to sum this up with, because we could talk about this for the entire show, was the Vidant Hospital. Originally, the Senate budget took $35 million out of the Vidant budget. Interesting thing happened, though. They decided to restore the $35 million, and they said they're going to give the Brody School of Medicine $200 million for a new building. But to get it, they got to restore the board positions to Vidant.
Right, and here's the base of that. Vidant got special treatment because it is a public teaching hospital. And public teaching hospitals, because it's supported by taxpayers and the public good and public benefit and all, get a higher Medicaid reimbursement. That's where the $35 million came in. So the question was, when Vidant took those board positions that made it a teaching hospital off, then are they a public teaching hospital, or are they a private teaching hospital? And there's benefits for those two. Yeah. But that seems to be getting ironed out, and I think there's a resolution for that.
We'll be looking forward to seeing that. For more than a week, many have been checking in each morning to find rulings from the U.S. Supreme Court. And finally, on the last day, which was Thursday, they announced the rulings on partisan gerrymandering. Well, actually, their decision was no decision. They sort of punted. The court said they weren't going to make a determination of what was or wasn't considered partisan gerrymandering. It was a decision to be made by the individual states. So they punted. Patrick, were you surprised by this decision? What did you think of it?
Not especially with the 5-4 decision and the ruling by what Justice Roberts said, that it would have been an unprecedented expansion of the judicial branch to make basically law in the Supreme Court. Look, partisan gerrymandering and partisanship and drawing district is not going away no matter how you put this together. There's other states that have tried to do it. But the partisans pick these nonpartisan commissions to draw the districts. And I know in Michigan, they have made it so it has to be 50-50 in all these districts, 50-50 in the congressional districts, Republican and Democrat. How do you do that in a place like Detroit?
I don't think you do that.
Well, that's what they wanted. That's what they're doing.
It's a good goal, but I don't see you do it. But I mean, Justice Elena Kagan spoke for the minority in this minority voting. She said, for the first time ever, this court refuses to remedy a constitutional violation because it thinks it beyond the task of judicial capabilities. Interesting?
It's interesting because I think it is a constitutional violation when we chart the fact that we are supportive of one person, one vote, and fairness and equity in providing access to the voting booth. I just think the court didn't have the courage to face up to it. And I'm sorry to look at our Supreme Court now, having grown up with the Supreme Court that always was the backstop for people like me, because we always felt that when the states started going in a states' right direction, the Supreme Court will step in.
Chris,
and this is just not happening
One
now.
of the things that people are asking, and these particularly Democrats and particularly people who wanted to see a ruling here, is how can the court rule that disadvantaging minorities is all right or not all right, and then turn around and saying disadvantaging political parties is all right.
It's a good question.
It's the same thing as disadvantaging a vote.
Yeah, although it does go to the Voting Rights Act, which they've also undermined. But a couple of things about this. Chief Justice Roberts also said that extreme partisan gerrymandering basically is incompatible with democratic principles. Those are his words, not mine, number one. Number two, we all used to think that was the case. Now somehow redistricting is a partisan issue nationally. I thought we all wanted fair districts. Maryland has gerrymandered districts which favor Democrats, which also is bad. So I'm really surprised at the reaction by a lot of Republicans. There were literally a lobbyist I know said there were high fives in the legislative building.
Interesting.
High fives in the legislative building saying we have an evenly divided state, but we can draw 10 congressional districts to make sure we get elected. That's in nobody's best interest.
So, Becki, where does this leave us so far as the cases that we've had on congressional? We've had courts rule that our congressional districts need to be redrawn. We've had courts rule that the cases that we've got so far as the legislature the districts need to be redrawn. Where are we now?
Well, and many of those cases were brought on things other than partisan gerrymandering. As Chris alluded to, some of them had to do with the Voting Rights Act. But where we are on this is the congressional districts will remain the same as they are in North Carolina because of this U.S. Supreme Court case. So as we move towards 2020, our candidates will be running in those districts that we have. What this does do, though, is there is a state case that does deal with partisan gerrymandering that I think is scheduled to begin hearings just in a couple weeks. So David Lewis, the state Supreme Court, I'm sorry, yes. So David Lewis had said in light of this U.S. Supreme Court, he is asking the others to dismiss this case. I don't think that's going to happen.
Patrick, I need to get into another aspect of this. So the Supreme Court says the states need to fix this. Let's think about it. There are some states that have what's called ballot initiatives or citizen initiatives. North Carolina doesn't have that. So where do we fix this? Either legislatively or in state courts. Is that it?
It's legislatively. And two things can be true about the Supreme Court. You cannot like these partisan districts, which they are, but you can also believe and should believe, in my view, that legislatures should be able to pass the parameters of how these districts are drawn. And that's, I guess, supposedly not done in North Carolina, but where they've tried to do that in other states, it just doesn't work
It's worked
either.
in Iowa. It's worked well in Iowa. They have much
doesn't
fairer
work in
districts.
Michigan. Doesn't work in New Jersey.
Michigan just started.
I need to move on to another decision that they made. They made a second decision on Thursday, and that was the one taking the citizenship question off the 2020 census for now. Is it dead? President Trump says he wants to delay the census.
I don't think it's dead at all. I think what's going to happen is the court has said it will open up for further arguments. It'll take those arguments and I think come back and revisit this and possibly even grant the request. But even if the court doesn't grant the request, I'm confident President Trump will.
Yeah. So far as
a much murkier decision, by
well,
the way.
There's some other aspects of this too, and that part of it is the court ruling. But now Thomas Hoffler, who was the Republican legislative district redistricting guru who died, his files have been inherited by his daughter. His daughter has produced proof and given it to the Democratic Party that says, here's why we did this.
She gave it to Common Cause, not the Democratic Party.
Here's why we did this. We did this because we think that it would, having this on the question, would dampen the response that we got from minorities and so forth like that, and probably make it a beneficial. Should the courts reconsider this decision based on that? Should this be entered into the debate now?
You mean the Thomas
Hoffler files, yes.
I don't think so. I mean, that seems sort of circumstantial to me. I mean, you know, and kind of not a big deal. I mean, you have a Republican map drawer who says we're going to figure out how to give our party
Except
the
they've argued
benefits.
in court that it doesn't give them a benefit. It's a huge thing. It's a smoking gun that they were trying to do this for partisan advantage.
All right. Well, this is something that I'm sure we'll be talking about again throughout the course of the next few weeks, because right now I need to switch over and ask you to tell us something we don't know. Patrick, Sebastian, I'll start with you.
Some little local politics, I'll say, is in Charlotte, they are looking to pass, the arts community is looking to pass a quarter-cent sales tax that would help the arts. And the city is saying, hey, we need this. The county is saying, hey, we need this to support the arts. And but some of the people that are supporting it are the hospitals, but they do not pay sales tax themselves. They're exempt from sales tax.
Becki, tell us something we don't know.
Tom, we've seen a lot of controversial issues. One that has not been controversial but is very significant is repealing the MAP Act. For years, the Department of Transportation was able to take people's property. The General Assembly has repealed that, and the governor has signed it into law.
Chris Fitzsimon, tell us something we don't know.
I mentioned that South Carolina has given a bigger pay raise this year than we are, and Patrick did mention that we still pay higher teacher pay, but North Carolina funds public schools 21% less per student than South Carolina. Think about that. Less per student than South Carolina.
Howard Lee, tell us something we don't know.
I'm concerned that North Carolina has punted again on an issue which I think is becoming more dangerous every day, and that is hands-free telephone using.
Say that again?
That North Carolina has not passed legislation requiring people to use hands-free telephones.
Well, they talked about it during the session.
They talked about it, but they punted.
Well, interesting. Well, it's been a fast-paced show. Thank you all. You've heard our spin on the issues of the day. To stay informed all during the week, sign up for our free weekly email newsletter. Give your feedback and read my weekly column, which, by the way, talked about the legislative budget dance. Visit our website, ncspin.com, or catch NC Spin on Facebook. Next week, we got a really special program for you as we are joined by 4-H Club members from across our state. We'll hear their opinions on today's issues. Until then, stay informed and watch out for the spin.
From treating the newest member of your family to helping a loved one make end-of-life decisions, your family physician is with you every step, for every stage of life, for every member of your family. Despite a healthcare landscape fraught with potential landmines, family physicians across North Carolina are providing you a lifetime of committed, dependable medical care. Family Physicians, your trusted healthcare advisor for life.
Life's busy, but you're in control. As an electric cooperative member, you have access to lots of tools to help manage your home energy use and budget, so you can focus on what's most important.
Partners for Innovation in Healthcare. We're supporting common sense solutions for North Carolina's healthcare delivery system, promoting access, affordability, quality care, and innovation. Visit us on the web at pihc.info.
NC Spin is brought to you in part by the North Carolina Farm Bureau. The Farm Bureau and Agriculture. We keep North Carolina growing.
North Carolina Channel is made possible by the financial contributions of viewers like you who support the UNC TV network.